Across this continent, there are people doing something extraordinary, not for the headlines, not for the applause, but because the work demands it. Leaders, entrepreneurs, thinkers, everyday heroes who wake up and choose to create. This is where we tell their stories, one builder at a time, one conversation at a time. Because the Africa I know is not waiting to be discovered. She is already moving. The Great Africans, a conversation by the Africa I know. Defiant, that is not my word. He wears it like a badge. He speaks like it's a promise. He lives it like a prayer. Jito Kayumba is Zambian, an investment professional, a builder of businesses, a servant of his nation, and by his own declaration, a defiant African. He left home as a young man, studied political science at Concordia University in Canada, learned how capital moves, how policy shapes nations, how the world decides who gets funded and who doesn't. He could have stayed in the comfort of knowing. Instead, he came home to Zambia and started doing. He co-founded Kukula Capital, one of Zambia's first venture finance companies, and pioneered private equity in a market that did not yet believe in its own young people. Through Kukula, he led investment that created over 2,000 jobs. Not on paper, in homes, in families, in communities that felt the difference. Airtel Zambia put him on their board. Zambia Breweries did the same. Concordia named him in their 50 under 50 for impact. Bloomberg wrote about him and Financial Times took notice. And in September 2021, the President of the Republic called. Today, Jito serves as a special assistant to President Hichilema for finance and investment. From inside the State House, he has helped drive record-breaking investment into Zambia's mines, her farms, her factories, and her future. But what tells me the most about who Jito is not the title on his door. It is what he does with his voice. He created something called Strip University. Not a building, not an institution, a philosophy. A steady drip of knowledge shared freely to any young African willing to listen. Lessons on enthusiasm, on discipline, on faith, and on showing up. Shared on social media, no paywall, no gatekeeping. Just a man who believes that what he carries does not belong to him alone. He once stood on TEDx stage and asked, can a new generation of defiant leaders save Africa? And then he answered his own question. Not with words, but with his life. This is Jito Kayumba. This is a great African. Jito, welcome.
Thank you.
I have been looking forward very much for this conversation, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate this opportunity as well.
Thank you. You are a man of deep faith, Jito. You have said you are fearfully and wonderfully made. In the middle of everything, in politics, the capital, the pressure, where does your strength actually come from?
I do believe that I am almost delusional with my faith. Things could be falling apart, but I just know no, I'll be okay because there's God.
Yes.
I believe that I don't have all the power in my hands to structure my life in the most perfect way. And I'm okay with imperfection. I know that there's some things you can deliberately do. This is part of what the Drip University philosophy is that you must leverage on knowledge that takes you into places that essentially no one would have ever expected. But the missing link in the journey towards achieving success, away from hard work, optimism, building a strong network, having a vocation, having expertise, competence, is there's certain things that require a divine touch.
Yeah.
With the knowledge base I have, my meeting President Hichilema many years before he became president That was serendipity. That was hand of God. Being able to meet my business partners where I did, same thing. Having a chance meeting with Mawano, the entrepreneur I talked about, hand of God was in there. All the things that I count as being massive, massive areas of value in my life had something that I cannot explain. And I fill that gap with God, and I see him in so many things that happen in my day-to-day life. I'm a human being like anyone else. I go through struggles. I go through doubt. But he comes through. Even when we're negotiating a difficult mining transaction, and I feel like I've reached my end, and then all it takes is a prayer, and then a miracle comes through. You just get that phone call. Oh, they've reconsidered. I think they're going to invest. You're like, oh, you've done the best. And this is sort of proof that you do your best, but let God do the rest. And that delivers results. And I see it played out in so many different ways. And, for me, it's something I'm not shy to say and recognize that I have, big limitations. But with him, I'm invincible.
What is the Africa you know? Not the one the Bloomberg articles told or the Financial Times profile. The one you see when you drive through Lusaka, when you sit with young entrepreneurs who has nothing but an idea and a phone. The Africa when you look out from the State House window and think what this continent is becoming. What is that Africa you know?
So the first thing is I see hope. I see, it's easy for one to say I see difficulty because it's true, there's poverty. We can never hide from that fact. But within that, there's a certain amount of beauty. When I talk about the famous butterfly, which is the most beautiful because it's got the hardest shell, I feel like some of the difficulties that surround us in Africa is a representation of that shell, but within it, that struggle to strive and become is part of what brings out the artistic nature of how we are, the loving nature. I think we're very joyful people. This is what I see everywhere I go. Yeah. If I'm in a low income community, a compound, and high dense area, people are joyful. They're selling their goods in the marketplace with a smile. People, you greet them, they light up. You see it even in some of my videos. Yeah. That is all genuine. Nothing is scripted, nothing is planned. I just go in there, I've got cameras around me, and they're capturing all of that in a very genuine way. So that's what I see is hope. I see optimism. I see a promise of truly a brighter future. And I also see the potential of the young people. Africa is home to the fastest growing young population in the world. In the next couple of decades, 1 in 4 people on the planet will be African. The fact is, the opportunity that exists, anyone who's a financial analyst, a person who understands business, will tell you that first and foremost, that's a marketplace. Secondly, that's also a workforce. The world needs labor. If you look at, for example, what built the 2 largest economies in the world, you've got the US and you've got China. The US is much more of a consumer economy. The Chinese economy is much more productive. Now, the Chinese being producers leveraged on a massive population. Over time, they had to decree that they need to have 1 child in order to reduce or manage the population because it was getting out of hand at the time. But it delivered results for the global supply chain because of the fact that they were highly productive. And I feel Africa could become similar to that, being a center of excellence, for productivity, for not only leading the energy transition in the world, because we're home to all the resources that the world needs in order to really just live a normal life, to people to drive EVs, for people to have renewable energy. All those minerals are here. And I feel harnessing that is also the key. And I think the key is moving towards a time of unity. One thing I'm very proud of, among many things, is the engagements that we have with our neighbors, from Tanzania to Zimbabwe to Botswana, you name it. The heads of state from those countries are here frequently. Our head of state is always there. And because we're being very deliberate around creating joint ventures. Ultimately, if you look at the circumstances for a Zambian, for a young Zambian, it's almost identical to the circumstances of a young Kenyan or young Tanzanian. So we have to be more collaborative if we're going to solve complex problems that exist on our continent. So with all of that being said, hope, the promise of a better future, the prosperity that is coming as a result of methodical visionary leadership, which is what we definitely have, and the potential for young people. This is really what I see.
You created Drip University.
That's right.
This beautiful idea that knowledge should flow freely, like steady drip.
That's right.
To anyone willing to receive it. You share lessons on enthusiasm, discipline, faith, leadership, all for free. First, why? In a world where everyone is monetizing what they know, why are you doing this?
You know, I owe a lot to, firstly, I owe a lot to God. You know, my life is a complete reflection of His grace. I've always seen myself as not being, I mean, I may appear to some people as being very confident. I was not always that way. I think a lot of things were placed in my hands that made me feel very fortunate. And it was purely divine. The people I met, the knowledge I was exposed to. Now, knowledge I've learned throughout life is power. Some of the mentors who have impacted my life have shared certain anecdotes with me, certain drips of knowledge that I've used and have worked. My life is a proof of concept of certain knowledge, sort of pearls of wisdom that when you implement, it works. And it's led me into incredible business environments, boardrooms, in places where I didn't even think I belonged. You know, I even had a bit of imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing as the youngest board member of a publicly listed company in sub-Saharan Africa? That happened. But it's because somebody took their time to tell me that. That's the greatest privilege I've ever experienced. And many young Zambians often feel highly resentful of the perception of those people who are exposed to going abroad. Oh, they're privileged, so that's why they're successful. But the fact is, and it's true, exposure does help a person enhance their ability to become successful. So what I thought is that, you know what, I want to see more Africans become successful. It goes back to being defined. I'm not going to withhold this. I don't want to be selfish with all the tools and the keys to success. Let me spread this. Whoever, just like me, picks this up, they will become successful. I want to be a person who celebrates a young African becoming successful, a young Zambian becoming not only a multimillionaire, but a creator of jobs. And it's not about the grandeur of having a lot of money. It's about, you know, money should be a reflection of impact. If you do so much for the world, you should have a commensurate reward as a result. And of course, with that, you can be a force for good, to be a benefactor of, you know, all sorts of elements, taking care of orphans, taking care of the hungry. And I think in society, the more we build up capacity among people of that nature, we can have a better society. That's what I'm pursuing. And that's what Drip University is about. And I believe in it wholeheartedly. Because if I told you 10 years ago that all the information, and I believed it with faith, that it would result in success, today I can tell you that my story, though it's still an ongoing story, is proof that that same information I put out there for free is going to deliver. And it gives me the greatest source of fulfillment. It's almost like therapy. Putting out information really does that for me.
That's beautiful. You came back to Zambia from Canada.
That's right.
And started Kukula Capital, pioneering private equity here at the age where most people in this market would not have returned your call. Take me back to those early days. What did it feel to knock on the doors that were not built for someone your age?
Wow. Now that's another deep one. I love it. You know, it was a tough time, but character is developed through difficulty. Nothing ever is made beautiful if there's no struggle.
Yeah.
I always love to share a story about a very special butterfly that comes out of the Amazon. It's got the hardest cocoon. And that's what makes it beautiful. And scientists have been studying it for years. And the times when they try to make it break out of the cocoon easily, it comes out not so beautiful. So the key is the philosophy of, at least my personal philosophy, and what I've recognized in many other people who've done great things, is difficulty shapes them. My difficulty was coming back home was really a labor, not just a labor of love, at least in terms of the work I was doing, but thinking about the future of my continent and being somewhat dismayed by how my country was being perceived, and wanting to be part of that. Now, when it wasn't immediate that I went into finance, I did try out different entrepreneurial ventures, and of course, opportunities were not that easy to find. I was very fortunate to have met a number of stakeholders in society, including the gentlemen who became my business partners, and how they helped shape my mindset, and us working together developed Kukula Capital. Now, one of the hardest things we had to face was the fact that we were a couple of young guys who had never managed significant sums of money before, in a market that had never seen private equity or venture capital before. So talking to pension funds, talking to wealthy people, institutional investors was very difficult, because we had not proven the concept. But fortunately, within the economic circumstances at the time, in the late, so we're talking about early 2010, Zambia's economy was certainly on the rise. At the time, we had Rupiah Banda, who was the president. The Securities Exchange Commission was quite receptive to new ideas. And we're fortunate that we had open-minded people in that institution, in that regulator, who were open to us essentially being accepted into that very unique club of fund managers. So now the narrative that we drove was one of impact and job creation. And we were lucky that a few investors, out of the hundreds we knocked on the door, all it takes is sometimes, imagine if knowing that out of 100 people, 5 people say yes.
Yeah.
Those 95 no's don't hurt as much. And it's also a story of persistence, And so that definitely was evidence of the power of persistence, regardless of your age. And I need to add this, which I think is very important as a message for young people. Oftentimes I encounter young people across the continent, and mostly in Zambia, and oftentimes they treat their youth as being a huge debilitator towards their success. We do live in a society where there's a lot of ageism, where people who are older would think like, oh, you're immature. You don't deserve to have this degree of responsibility or anything of that nature. But the vitality, the energy, the creativity of youth is something that is irreplaceable. It's, in my view, it's the most attractive thing about young people. And we were quite vivacious, and we utilized that same energy to be able to impress those who mattered most. And we were able to attract that capital. We proved the concept, and the rest is history.
Oh, fabulous. So 2,000 jobs.
Yeah.
That is not a line on a CV.
No.
That is 2,000 families.
That's right.
Whose lives shifted because you chose to invest in Zambia. Tell me about one of them, one investment, one person, one story that stayed with you.
There's a number. My favorite story is the .com Zambia story. I'd heard of this young tech entrepreneur. His name is Mwamvita Makamba. I heard a story of him coming back he studied in the US, noticed how young Zambians would want to access certain goods out of the US. They'd always ask him, oh, can you buy me a pair of Nikes? I'll pay you when you reach. Or can you buy me whatever product that we didn't have? And he'd always fly back with stuff. He created a business out of that, an e-commerce business called .com Zambia. Then he started to ideate around pivoting the business model towards making a bus ticketing business that makes it easier for people in Zambia to be able to purchase a bus ticket utilizing an app, using a technological platform, so that you don't have to wait on queues and things of that nature. And when you go to Intercity, a bus terminal, that it's quite how do I put it mildly? It's a hectic place. You have a lot of people jostling to either take you to their bus, but the point is, he wanted to solve a problem that he saw in the marketplace. He saw congestion, he saw inconvenience. And to me, the best entrepreneurs are the people who are best at seeing where the problem is. Sorting out pain points, because what we pay for is solutions. And we all pay for convenience. And he created that business model, the concept, and I heard him pitch it. And I bumped into him at, there's an ambassador at the time, I think she was the ambassador of Sweden, and we had breakfast. And I went back to my partners and said, you know what, I found this entrepreneur, he's onto something, we should invest in him. And we started to dig in, we started to engage him, and I was doing the initial screening, and then escalated it to my partners, took it up to the investment committee, we approved, and it was a $500,000 transaction. Now, at the time, and that was unheard of. A young tech business,
Beautiful.
a Zambian fund investing in a Zambian tech business. Today, by the way, years later, that company has listed on the Lusaka Stock Exchange. It is highly profitable. It has a massive valuation. It's an incredible success story. A story of faith in youth,
Yes.
a story of resilience, a story of locally grown solutions, local capital, local entrepreneur, young, and its technology. The future of Africa depends on enhancing efficiencies through technology, innovation. To me, that's by far one of my favorite stories. We've done farming, we've done real estate projects, building material projects, but that one stands out. He's employing hundreds of people, impacting many people who subscribe to his service, and inspiring many Zambians who, by the way, now are shareholders because it's listed on the stock exchange. So they get to participate in the benefits. So that's really the story I like.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. There's a young person watching this right now. Maybe in Lusaka, maybe in Lagos.
Sure.
Maybe in a village with one bar of a signal, who is ambitious, driven, full of fire, but not sure if the system will ever make room for them. You were that person once. What do you say to them?
I said to them, first and foremost, is that do not concentrate on your limitations. Limitations are very easy to look at as being what will stop us from becoming successful. What we have to do instead is look at how do we resolve those limitations, which, say, for example, a community that we're in has a challenge with electricity, or has a challenge with access to water, access to nutrition, access to anything. And you could be part of bridging that gap in providing that solution. That's where the money is. A lot of young people often come to me saying, I would be successful if I had capital. There's no doubt that capital is essential to getting a business going, and I'm a venture capitalist, so I appreciate the power of capital. But I appreciate even more the power of an idea that's thoroughly ideated, where a person has thought through, how do I solve this problem, like in a very deep, empathetic way. Because empathy at the core, which is what Africans are, and that's what Ubuntu is all about. It's really feeling the pain of another, or feeling the experience of another, and you extending a helping hand as a result of your understanding of the difficulty of another person's situation. So with all of that being said, the key is to ideate around solutions.
Yes.
And these are solutions that will essentially attract capital, because capital loves a gap.
Yes.
And once that gap is filled, and that gap essentially discovers that there's a marketplace, because once you prove that there is someone willing to pay for that solution, it creates a business. Mo Ibrahim, at a time on the continent where there's no mobile phones, mobile network, and many people laugh to say, how are you going to take technology to a place where people are poor? They can't afford a handset, can't afford to pay for phone credit. Today, it's one of the biggest industries on the continent. So nobody should ever undervalue the opportunity that exists in Africa. If you look at some of the fastest growing industries, from textiles to, of course, minerals is one thing, more for exports, but the mobile phone sector, the insurance sector, the banking sector, all of this is comprised of African consumers. The food sector, the opportunity around agriculture. The former president of the African Development Bank, Adesina, spoke of the next generation of multimillionaires or billionaires in Africa will come out of agriculture. That is something that comes inherently to us because we have abundant arable land on our continent. So all of these things are things we can use, and let's not shy away from asking. Us Africans are very kind-hearted and very considerate. So we don't ask very, questions aggressively, or we don't demand. So that's the other point I thought I should make. Demand what you deserve. Don't sit back and wait for someone to give it to you. Sometimes you have to seize the opportunity, because somebody else will. And many people lament about the idea of people coming from foreign lands, across seas, to come and do things in Africa, do eggs and do chickens. And they say, why are you doing that? I say, but you could have done it yourself. You took things for granted. Sometimes I can be very tough on myself as well as my fellow Africans, because I know that we can do better as a people. So let's have a more optimistic mindset. And this is another thing that's extremely important. is that the world truly is defined and the beneficiaries of a mindset of optimism is ultimately, it's defined by that, right? It's defined by those who have that sort of mindset. So that's, among many other thoughts, I guess I could put across, is what my message would be to that young African who is feeling a degree of hopelessness and feels as though things are, as the deck is stacked against them. The circumstances are not going to deliver prosperity, but in actual fact, they have more agency than they can imagine.
A lot of young Zambians are looking at you as this charismatic, energetic, a very breath of fresh air young leader, and see their hope and dreams in you, and they see themselves in you, boys and girls.
Sure.
And perhaps attach a hope in you. What are your thoughts yourself and plans for the future of Zambia? I'm sorry if this is it.
Okay. No, I mean, I can answer that. I must tell you, I love being somebody who is a servant of the country, especially and specifically under President Hakainde Hichilema.
Beautiful.
I would not be in government if it weren't for him. It was never a desire or a dream of mine to be a government official. I went into the private sector, doing private equity. I've always wanted to be financially successful and wanted to build a business within the private sector and really stimulate the financial ecosystem, to build a Pan-African fund. That's always been the goal. I did fall in love with people, of course, and with the community, because I'll tell you, when I was running the fund with my partners, my mind was always, I was in the boardroom, I was in the corporate office. I was not sitting at the street corner with a child who's homeless, or with a widow who's selling tomatoes, who's going through difficulties in Matero, in Kanyama, in Nakadole Market. These are parts of our country where there's high degree of poverty, and things are rather difficult. Or playing a football game with kids in Bauleni or in Kanyama. That has transformed me. It has made me it has given me purpose. But with that being said, the only condition that makes the most sense, especially for me to be in public service, is working with President Hichilema. Because I believe that once he's done with his tenure, which is my hope and my prayer, is that I would have played a significant part in fostering and assisting him to fulfill his vision of quadrupling the size of our economy, creating wealth. It means that I too can now go back to the private sector and continue to do part of what I was doing in government, create jobs, have a little bit more freedom. To be honest with you, I do miss the freedom of the private sector. I think it's an environment where right now there's a lot of scrutiny. Of course, when you're a public official, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of, people have a way in which they perceive you. Some great, but sometimes not so great. But I feel like everything has its time. I leave everything to the will of God. But as far as my desire is, I would love to hang my hat at the right time as the president exits office, which I believe will be in the next 5 years after his second term. And I could be someone who can not only continue to build the Kukula Fund for Zambia, but also take on the Pan-African approach. Because I must admit, the last close to 5 years of my time in government, I've met so many incredible people, including yourself, people who are doing incredible things across the continent. Nothing makes me more excited about the idea of leveraging those contacts. Right now, I can't leverage on them, for business at least. It would be seen as conflict of interest and all sorts of issues. But I'd love to build a massive business empire, one that young Africans will say, okay, this is another piece of evidence that Drip University can deliver incredible results. And again, try to inspire more young Africans to pursue public office so they can lead diligently, deliver results. And I, in the private sector, would support them as a person who's a generator of jobs and a taxpayer, and of course, not only an employer, of course, but as somebody who's part of stimulating the local economy. So that's how I think. But again, I leave everything up to God.
Beautiful. You called yourself a defiant African.
Yes.
You stood on a TEDx stage and said the status quo is completely unacceptable.
That's right.
That was before State House. Now you're inside the system. Has the defiance changed, or has it found a different room to walk into?
That's a very powerful question, and I'll give you context as to what it means now from my mindset of defiance, particularly being in the system as you've stated. It's provided more context into appreciating why we need to be defined as Africans. And being defined is not necessarily against any specific government. It's about the status quo for Africa, the economic hardships that we face as Africans. If you look at the global scheme of things, Africans are the poorest people on the earth, and are often met, as I stated in my TED Talk, with enormous difficulty everywhere they go, from racism to all sorts of treatment that is not befitting of who we are, which is beautiful people, soulful people, people who have a caring heart, people who are anchored in Ubuntu. And my defiance is shaped from the world's perception of Africa as being a place that's lost of hope, that does not have potential. But the fact of the matter is, we have to sort of, not just based on perception, but based on knowing who we are, so that it begins to show. Because I'm a big believer that the only way you can change the narrative is to practically create tangible solutions so people can see. When we turn the resource base that we have into wealth, wealth that we control, that can enable young people on our continent, among everyone, in fact, all Africans, to have better life, better quality of life, have access to the basics, your housing, your food, your water, you name it, and ultimately reach a level of actualization which is comparable to other parts of the world, but where we still maintain our value as Africans, where no African gets old and is put in a nursing home. We take care of our parents, we take care of our neighbors, we raise children as a community, right? It takes a village to raise a child. My defiance is saying to the world that we are truly and deeply special. It's not reflected in the economic numbers. It may be, from their perception, reflected in seeing a child with a pot belly with flies. That's not the Africa that I know. Yes, we know that there's difficulty, but it's also about us working better together. We've been divided throughout history by colonial forces and various other elements that benefit from our divisions. And part of defiance is also us pushing towards unity. Because many leaders historically who've tried to unify have actually met very negative consequences towards various forces around the world. Now, really to wrap up and sum up the answer to the question around the context of being in State House, I've had even more insight on looking at our society, particularly Zambia, as well as other countries, because I travel around the continent. And I get to have a very deep appreciation of the economic circumstances, of all the specific social indicators that tells you the living conditions of your everyday African. And it makes me much more determined to fight, to be a force for good. And when you see me mentor, when you see me post things that you see, it's deliberate. And as you really eloquently put it, deliberate to make sure that more Africans are thinking along the same lines. We work better together, we work hard, we maintain our values, we deliver results for a better quality of life.
Jito, thank you for your defiance, for your generosity, and for the fire you carry for Zambia and this continent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mwamvita.